I've been on Roblox for more than half my life. I was introduced to it by an ad, like most kids, then. I had friends and family who played it with me, and while it wasn't something I played a ton of compared to other things, it was an absolute regular in my life. I think almost immediately once I made an account, after playing as a guest for years, because I was too scared to make an email, I didn't know how to, I was messing with the studio. I could easily just drag things in and play and had a playable game. Never really thought of it as making a real game, though. It was only until I hit a point in a project that made me step back and look at what I've done years later. Had to have been around like 2017 or 18. I had these pretty small but large at the time ideas. I was making all this stuff for them. I had plans down the line. And once I realized that, I could do more than just make a Roblox game in Roblox Studio. I saw a way into legitimate game development. When I thought of my inspirations or what I thought was cool or the best, I didn't picture the little Lego people, Roblox, or any of the front page Roblox games. I never wanted to make Roblox games. I wanted to make something like Shadow Man, Nightmare Creatures, Silent Hill, Doom, Max Payne, or Fantabulous game. Actually, the main reason I ever considered game development possible for me, or realistic, was because Egg-like games. When I saw Vinny play those games years ago, I could see the human touch in them. I could imagine placing those objects and using those simple stock assets, terrible textures. Those games also felt quite human. It was jokes and inside stuff that was just time-specific, made for a streamer to laugh at once. I really set out to make something like those Egg-like games. It felt possible to me. And by proxy, I decided to pick Roblox to be the place for that. You could import your own meshes and textures, and I felt like as long as I could get the visuals there and the sounds there, I basically had the game. 8 years later, today, I think I have finally quit Roblox. I feel pretty stupid saying that because it feels like a pathetic translation of more grave and important things, like quitting smoking. It just sounds so stupid to say I quit Roblox, but I think I've processed where I've been and how things have gone enough to understand that it's not so stupid. That leaving Roblox wasn't just a video game or a platform or whatever you want to credit and describe it as. Like, I did have friends in communities that I exclusively hung out with on Roblox because of its availability, but also through years of just being on it and being an artist, a creative person, I had games that I've made that people really like, that I felt like I needed to stick around for. It felt stupid just to up and leave. It felt rude also. I didn't want to let down people. It's also easier to continue working with what I had rather than starting from scratch. And also, despite making the community and social aspect sound the most important to me, as a game developer, the real issue came with having my brain wired entirely to how Roblox worked. Like how to structure a game, program, use assets, and also the existence of moderating every asset that's imported. The kind of people that you'd have play your games, or how they view it, how it's advertised, just everything. The baseline to every pictured thought of game development in my mind is rooted in how Roblox works. I guess just to get the point across, I'm going to try to make the same thing in both Roblox and Godot, and compare the experience of both. And try my best to walk you through years of my experience and trying to make my ideas in Roblox. Alright, here we go. To a great start. The immediate second I open the studio, 6-7 monster. A bunch of errors. New UI, by the way. I still have not properly learned how to use this new UI. It also feels really gross, even just to make a small point for this video, to use this engine again. What I think I'm gonna make is I want to make just a simple character controller that you'd see in any other engine. Default in Roblox, you have the Roblox character, and you can move, camera works, you can zoom, chat, everything kind of works. Well, not so much chat. But to me as a kid, like when it came to games and how they feel, look, and play, I had other inspirations. When it came to Roblox, like, Roblox has consistently felt awful. Back in the day, it was a physics game. It was an intentionally janky little sandbox. I mean, the movement is so rigid and just unfun. When you land, the character, like, bounces a bit, so it's just not snappy or perfect like I'd want it to be. So there's just so many options that just aren't available. Like, just for example, that smooth movement I was talking about, you can do that. And I'll try to do that right now. There you go. I made the mass of the character, basically, really low. And that makes the controller kind of slower like this. And while that's better, or you try to change direction, it can suddenly just get really sluggish like that for some reason. And when it stops, it's abrupt. It just kind of chooses to be slow sometimes. It feels terrible to control. And why I love slidey controls so much is because Doom, like, entirely. But the controls of Doom are so fluid. It's one of those things where, like, compared to a lot of modern games, of which I feel like are so mechanical, it can turn off a lot of people, but it got me in. That game's controls are eternal for me. So I guess this works. It doesn't feel good, and the kind of movement I was wanting out of this you can't quite get. This is when it gets really confusing. How would you do that? Would you add velocity to the character, or would you use the walk speed stuff, or make it walk to things? There's so many directions you could take it, and all of them have pros and cons. And a lot of the cons come with working with the humanoid. So what we're going to do is, we're going to entirely ditch the humanoid. I'm not going to use any humanoids. We're going to work from scratch, like a normal physics engine. We're going to have a part as a collider, and just make this the character. And we're just going to try to make this work. And now we got a character. By default on Roblox, this is something I've had to really wrap my head around with other engines, is that this is by default a physics object. So I have to tell it not to do physics things in order for it to work properly in a way that's fun to control. So for instance, if I were to drop this from the air, it would bounce. Where is the play? How do I just watch it? No, that's not. Where is that? Test here, run. There you go. But you can see when I drop this from the air, it bounces, it tilts, and obviously you wouldn't want that. Plus, it has friction, so if I were to add velocity to the side of this, it would probably just tip over. And obviously you'd have to add custom properties to it, but adding custom properties to it is like an override to default stuff, so now I have to do this. And here's what do you do with this? So I'd obviously just do like 0 friction and 0 elasticity. It's still bounced. You have to set the weight of both of those to a really large number, and finally it lands and doesn't bounce. But I don't know if you saw that. It clips into the floor. So now what do? You have to go to workspace, look for physics stepping method, and set it to fixed, because you might think default is fixed, but no, default is like 60 FPS, and this is like double that. And now this is much better. And still, even now, it will clip and do weird things. I don't know why the primary part position was being weird. Probably didn't set that. Now, there's a few ways you can go about this. One you can manually script it to not do physics things like rotate or have angular velocity at all. Or you can use constraints to do it. So I'll do an align orientation, attachment, we'll do a linear velocity. I'll set this the attachment, one attachment, set this to a really large number so nothing can impact it. Bounce this up. Alright, cool. Now it just won't rotate. And the linear velocities we'll use to move. I think a big issue that I have with this, rather than just working with what's there, a lot of the process of working on Roblox is circumventing or making alternatives to override existing things. So often there are really complicated layers, like per axis. I need to set this to per axis and set y to 0, or else like gravity won't afflict me. So I need to set that to that. And then there's max axis force. If you set this to a number that's too high, you'll push everything out of your way and clip into walls. But if you set it too low, your movement will sometimes just not be able to slow itself down fast enough. This isn't adding to velocity, it's setting it with parameters. And if you want to circumvent that, I guess you can either use vector force, but vector force just plain adds to it. So then how do you make custom dampening and stuff? So I prefer to use this because it's simpler, but the holdbacks are that it's kind of confusing to work with. Set this to plane, tangent, secondary tangent axis to Z, and now we have a flat 2D plane of movement and something that doesn't allow us to rotate. And this attachment will be the physical stuff. We'll make another attachment, which will be the camera. Move. And will not rotate. Now, immediately, I want you to notice an issue. If I make this character move, or drop it, or whatever, too far. There it is. If you look carefully, this thing is actually in the floor. Because we're using just raw physics to do this, and we don't actually have like a proper character collider to detect floors and be perfectly wherever it needs to be, if I run this character into a floor, a part against a part like this, if I were to run into here, I would be running into the wall from the inside of this other part. Now how to fix this is a nightmare. A project of mine called Screw You is a perfect example of this nightmare. Endlessly, I have attempted to grapple with this engine to get it to not do that. And all that effort has done is created more issues like that. And you need to somehow find a way to just dance around them. And I think that's my huge gripe with the engine. It's just such a blabberfest this video is going to be. But there's no other way to properly encapsulate how much of an issue this is. Like, if you're making just a Roblox game, and a lot of this stuff at least makes sense to you, and you're not going through this length, obviously, but you have to be absolutely delusional to not see that this is an issue. And that anything you make in this engine, it will always be, to some degree, worse. Okay, scripting time. Another thing about circumventing issues is that I need to name this script animate, make another script here called RBX character sounds, in order for Roblox to not scream at me with errors because of the automated scripts that they put that do such things. Oh, also a script called else. So this is just, you know, pointless bloat that I have to put in my controller. Alright, got basic mouse controls in, and that is just this. Right, there we go, we got movement in. And now, because of the speed thing I set, whenever I press W or S, it has to adjust itself weirdly, so I'm just gonna set that 500 and see what it does. We got basic movement, mouse controls, and now that we got this base in, it's actually really, really easy to expand on it. So now, instead of just setting it to whatever the speed is, now make it like lerp towards stuff, so alright, here we go. Much different than Roblox is. It is frame perfect, where it adjusts and how it adjusts. I can change my frame rate and it will act exactly the same. A level of movement you just don't really see. Because to get to this point, you'd have to have already known to do this. But we haven't even really tackled how to make, you know, jumping or something. So, you know, floor detection, how are you gonna do that? So I guess what we're gonna do for floor detection is to use their raycasting system. So let's figure that out. Now, as I've said, this has the inaccuracy issues where you can see the character might sink into the floor like that. If you really wanted, go through the pain, getting that raycast and setting the player from the difference of that. These raycasting systems have insane inaccuracy problems and will likely be the bane of sanity, because at any given moment, using a system like that, you would have to constantly put in little safety nets, checking for crazy numbers that come out of nowhere. Alright, so that's the controller. Tallies up to 70 lines of code. A good almost half of that is initialization and functions that I wrote myself to do basic things. Conversions, reading inputs. It's probably not the way a lot of people would do it. It works for me. And now, Godot. The thing I've always not liked about Roblox is I have to always constantly dance around all of the forced mechanics that it has built into the engine, that otherwise you'd have to tell it not to do that. Some things constantly, but in this case, all of those things kind of have to be asked to do anything, which is great. This first scene, we're gonna make the character body. I like the character body. It comes with the bare necessities of making just something that works. Collision shape will, to keep consistent with the project I was working with, just do this for give it a visual as well. And now we'll add a thing for the camera. I'm gonna structure the way the camera works a little differently, because I feel like how rotation and stuff is treated in GD script is this is something that I think works alongside that. So we're gonna have a node 3D side camera rotation, and then the camera itself will be vertical camera rotation. I guess we'll just call this the slider. This is the body. Right, then we will attach a script to the character body because it actually comes with a template script. And this template script is a great thing to start off. It basically teaches you a bunch of little tactics that I really like. Though, I will change some of these because personally, I think this is pretty dumb. I would also like to transform this to the flat. You'll notice though, like I said, things don't do things unless you ask them to. This is me asking for its physics to run that frame. This is me adding physics if they're not in the floor. This is me giving the character gravity. This is gravity. Gravity won't happen unless I'm on the floor. The character will be affected by gravity by this line if they're not standing. Alright, so set the keys. They go by string here with these functions which refer to the input map. This character, make a new scene. Call this test world, static body, collision shape, mesh. I'm just gonna for a box. We're gonna put that all into a node so we can squash it. Move these, this is what it actually looks like. Put a directional light, make that a little dimmer. Point light here, go here. And then you just drop the character right there. And if we go and change character here, it will actually automatically change everywhere else. You can actually get a reference of what the camera looks like. The camera is one object, and by default it will refer to this camera as the visual, but you can set the camera to whatever temporarily. Really nice, I love the way it works. Near and far plane, FOV, all the things that we have here that Roblox does not give you. If you want, you have to go through some real gymnastics to get. Yeah, you know what? That's that. It's definitely got issues, but it's there. I have to translate it to. I think I could just do head transfer. I should do that. Set type. There you go. We can now jump, move around, look. It's a little janky. Obviously needs some polish, but it's all there. Movement smooth. Let's add zooming. Alright, got it to work. Here it is. We got scrolling. The mouse lock works differently, but it's whatever. Sensitivity is also pretty high, but yeah, it's all there. This is just the very basis of a controller. These buttons are hard to click. God, where is the anchor? God, I'm so glad I don't work with this anymore. That is tough. Anchor. It used to just be so really compact. Now it's so fat. Yeah, it works better than I thought it would. But yeah, it's just like these little hops and stuff, and how it treats really steep things, like, or how it can't step up stuff like that. Like, these are all things that I don't have to deal with because of the very baseline that came with the character body 3D thing. It already comes with like boundaries that can just pretty. I know the movement's like super fast for some reason. I don't know why I configured it like that, but it comes with boundaries like that, and they're pretty easy to work with. And I like that the bare minimum can just be added on top of and work. Like, it serves its purpose. It doesn't cause or create any issues. It just does what it has to. In my experience working with Roblox, I'm so used to having to have some sort of system in the way of making something simple that I constantly have to fight in order to make that simple thing work. But in here, the bare minimum is just there, and it's on you to add stuff on top of that, or to add more polish, or to do what you want to do. Movement a little more manageable. Gravity's a little weird, but I'm just insanely happy to at least have, like, finally pulled the band-aid. And there are a lot of issues I have with this engine, but it's shortcomings that I can just circumvent with external tools like Blender and such. See, just in debugging tools, and the fact that the engine just on its own isn't broken. I know I'm absolutely the minority of developers on Roblox doing what I was doing, but for anyone that is making some sort of unique game that extends past Roblox, make the move. You don't realize the benefits. You will not have updates coming out forced by a corporation that is making changes that you have to conform to because they have moderation models and chat moderation, and there's the whole UGC stuff, and you don't have to feel the pressure of the entire platform and all of its issues on your little game, which is starting to become more and more and more prevalent. If you got Robloxian Stockholm Syndrome, snap out of it.